Happy May 5, 5 de Mayo.
Yay!
Yay!
Bueno.
We're honored to have a drummer, Rhonda. Let's give her a hand. And we're honored to have you here too. We have, yay for us. We have here several instruments, mostly maracas. I invite you to take one back to your seat, and we're going to follow the rhythm established by Rhonda for about 5 minutes, and then we'll begin with an explanation of the 4 elements, and we'll proceed from there. So feel free to come up and get one. Hold them. Do not start yet until we all have one, please. Okay, so Rhonda will set the tone for us. This is a moment of going deep inside, opening in a sacred manner. So grab your instruments and let's proceed to find our inner spirit.
I don't know that I can beat the pace. Anybody have a rhythm that can do with
As Sharon, Joy, and I were coming up with an agenda, out of somewhere the word 4 elements came. So I wanted to share with you, as briefly as I can, based on some notes I wrote, a brief explanation of how the 4 elements of fire, air, water, and earth relate to what we are doing as it relates to climate change. Fire as an element represents transformation. In the physical plane, we have sun, flame, blaze. On the spiritual plane, it is light, that is illumination. But when fire gets out of control, fire can kill life and destroy forests and fields. Hence, we may state that the increase in wildfires caused by excessive climatic change and droughts is to us really a specter of climate change. Second, the element water is a cleansing power. Water is vital to Earth. Water is vital to life on Earth. But also water has the terrible power of destruction, such as tidal waves, storm surges, floods. On a spiritual plane, water represents unconditional, flowing, streaming love as that of a mother. Constant motion is her aim, change and renewal her way. Hence, we may say that water is in its visible manifestation of climatic impact. A very potent image is found in storms and increasingly in the long droughts. Third, the element earth means matter. The element earth shows in wood, minerals, soil, vegetable matter, food. On a spiritual plane, earth is symbolic of the Creator, providing all creatures with the love of Pachamama, who presides over planting and harvesting. Earth as the fourth, as the third. Earth has the power of terrible destruction, such as earthquakes on the ocean floor. Remember Fukushima. And so landslides and beach erosion, as natural barriers are diminished, reminds us that climate change has its roots deep in our psyche. The fourth and last element, air. Air, too, is a cleansing power. Air provides oxygen. As we breathe, we observe the principle of giving and taking. In breathing, we are truly connected one to each other. In a polaric sense, this source of life, air, can be a terrible force of destruction when out of control. We call this force hurricanes, tornadoes. In Florida, we know this all too well. Humans are destroying and protecting the life-giving air shield of Earth by exhausts, fumes, and toxic gases. In conclusion, our atmosphere cries out, get me back to 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide, soon, very soon. Sharon Joy is now going to introduce the next section related to those who are present who are going to be speakers. Sharon Joy.
Thank you, David. So did you hear enough about what 350.org is to answer your question? Because the main thing is we're here. Bill McGibbon is up at Middlebury College in Vermont, and he's kind of a ringleader in this, spokesperson and behind 350.org. The other sponsor or host today is the Interfaith Power and Light, and we have the good fortune Executive Director here to issue a welcome. And Andy, if you will, tell folks what Interfaith Power and Light is about.
Thank you, Sharon Joy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is amazing and wonderful to me to be among like-spirited brothers and sisters as we come together to do the work to reclaim 350. It's a scientific concept. For some people, it's far too esoteric, it's an abstraction. But the reality of the world is devastating as we continue to pump more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every day than the Earth has the capacity to reclaim by its own natural systems. I'm the Executive Director of an organization called Sunshine State Interfaith Power and Light. We are a fairly new state affiliate with a nationwide Interfaith Power and Light organization. Interfaith Power and Light is the religious response to global warming. I know that that troubles many people. We have had many environmental groups look at us askance and say, but you have been the enemy for a long, long time. Some folks, some religious folks have been. But the thing that enticed me to this work of interfaith environmental work, an interfaith, truly an interfaith response to global warming is this. Several years ago, I came to realize through study that when you look at all of the major world religions, there's one area that we all hold in common, and there's really no disagreement on. Who would have thought? And the concept is this: the earth does not belong to us. It never has, it never will. And on top of that, we are all, in the native traditions, when I talk about the two-legged people, all of the major faith traditions of the world remind us that we are here to be stewards, to be benevolent caretakers of this planet. And I think Great Spirit gave us that work, knowing that not only do we have an amazing capacity to care for the earth, we also have amazing capacity to harm and destroy it. So we have to be reminded over and over and over again why we're really here. We're here because we are about caring and about loving. We're here to love each other. We're here to love this planet. We are here to love not only the two-legged people, but the four-legged people, the winged people, the finned people, even the creeping, crawling people. Okay, the little buzzing ones. Okay. I struggle with that one. But yes, we are here to love them too. We are all part of the circles of life on this planet. So I know we come from many faith traditions. Maybe some of us no faith traditions. Some of us now call ourselves spiritual because we've been fed up with the horrendous atrocities by many religious folks. And as one of those religious folks, I ask your forgiveness for the horrible things that my tradition has done through the years. Forgive us and work with us as we try to reclaim the true spirit of the work we're all called to do. I was told I had 2 minutes. I'm sure that's more than.
You're a host, though.
But I'm a host. I could go on for a long time, but I won't. I just want to say, in closing, remember, there are lots of brochures for Sunshine State Interfaith Power and Light up here. Please come take a look, take a brochure with you. If you'd like to partner with us, work with us to help us reach out to other people of faith who need to know what's really going on in the world, please join us. We need you. But I want to say in closing that I'm also a psychotherapist. And there has been a lot of amazing work in recent years on psychological and emotional impacts that global climate change, environmental degradation, economic contraction is having on us two-legged people. It's hard. It's just hard these days, knowing what's happening all around us on so many levels. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Love each other. Make sure you're doing the things that you need to do to stay well in this work. This is not a sprint. It is not going to be over in any of our lifetimes. This is a marathon. And we're doing this not only for ourselves and our kids, but as so many scientists are telling us, we are doing this work for the next 50 generations and beyond. So keep doing the amazing things you're doing. Reach out. We can't do it alone. And do it in the name of love. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. Well, as McKibben said recently, this is probably the biggest story of our time. And I'm looking at the storytellers right here. It truly is up to us. I'm so glad we're all here. It's sort of like speed dating or something like that, because I've asked people to speak 2 minutes about what they're doing, what some organizations they're involved in are doing in 2 minutes. Now, I know that sounds bizarre, but Carl Nurse and I started something like that about 5 years ago at the City Hall in St. Petersburg about bringing green jobs and green industry. And what we found is while the people maybe they had a minute and a half, I think it was 2 minutes, then they started to self-organize afterwards and have coffee and lunch, and one thing led to another. So, Carl, would you start us off just telling about the city of St. Petersburg, what's going on? Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Carl Nurse. I know the majority of y'all from the City Council member in St. Pete. St. Petersburg started, really, I think we tricked them into applying to be the first green city in the state. It was actually Darren Rice and I came up with this scheme. But the end result was that once they got started, they found that there was an endless number of ways they could save money. For instance, this happens to be owned by the city. And you can see, you can tell the lights have been replaced recently. And those happen to be induction lights. What happened is we found that there were hundreds and hundreds of ways that the city can save money. In this environment, what I can get done is things that makes economic sense. And what I've learned is that is clearly an endless number of things that the city can do, or any government institution that reduces our gas bills, our power bills, and oh, by the way, it helps global warming, but we don't, candidly, that happens to be a side effect that it's kind of hard to fight it. They know this is some sort of scam, but when you're saving money, it's hard to fight that. And so I just happen to tell you that the strangest new one that we're working on right now, we're going to capture the gas from the sewer treatment plants, which is methane, and of course you know how powerful that is. And we're going to run our garbage trucks on that. Because they currently use diesel, they get about 4 miles to the gallon, and so there's 32 of them running at any given time for residential and about 15 for commercial. It's like $1 million a year, strangely, and currently, we're not capturing that gas, and so once you get started, it really never ends. As you discover, there are more and more ways to do this. Happened to be on Tampa Bay Water. When I got on there a couple of years ago, their power bill was $19 million a year. Well, this year their power bill is $13 million. Next year it'll be 12. And we're still in the easy stages. And so, I would say that whatever local government you're working with, it really candidly, it starts with an energy audit. And what they discover is that the opportunities don't end. There's dozens of opportunities to save money. And that's where you start.
I didn't cut you off.
It's all right. Thank
Is it good?
I don't know.
Well, again, I don't know that we need this, but anyway, I forgot to give the warning. I'll try to remember to do this about 15 seconds before your time is up, so you don't get cut off like Carl was, although that was a good method.
Can you bring that method to City Hall, please?
No, it's on. It's on. David, why don't you tell about what's going on at Eckerd since you're sitting right here?
Hi, I'm David Hastings. I'm a faculty member at Eckerd College. I'm a climate change scientist, a chemical oceanographer, and I think about the past history of climate change, so I'm thinking about what's going to happen in the future. And as a scientist, it's pretty troubling to see what's going on, and it's unusual for scientists to be as active as we are. Typically, we're behind our desks in front of our machines and our computers, and I've seen the community of scientists transform in the last about 5 or 6 years into a group of some fairly active folks. And it's really unusual, and it's because it's a worrisome time. We're able to look at timescales longer than City Hall and longer than election cycles, and it really doesn't look good. And in thinking about solutions, it looks like in this market-driven economy, the fact that what we think is right and wrong, kind of on a moral basis, doesn't really work anymore. So this is not about morality or peace, as Carl Nurse talked about. It's really about saving money in the long run and adhering to a market-driven economy. So what that's going to take is something that looks like a carbon tax, and since that's so politically unfeasible, it's up to us to motivate our elected representatives, folks like Carl and beyond, to do something. Because at this point there is really nothing going on at the political level. There's really there's no policy going on. So I encourage you be engaged in the political process at every level. So at Eckerd College, we're trying to educate 20-year-olds. We're trying to build buildings a little bit better. We're trying to have a little bit better lighting, that sort of things. But it needs to happen at every level. We need to examine our individual lives, how we're living, how we're getting to work, school, play, and then beyond, we need to look at our elected representatives. I see that Sharon Joy isn't on her stick.
No.
I'll respect I'll respect the time, but it's great to be here and collaborate. This is how movements work. This is how we change. And Carl, you got to get that toilet fixed, I think.
Sounds like it.
George, what about, oh, thanks, Douglas. What about the Earth Charter?
Hi, I teach ethics, and I am also the chair of Earth Charter US. And my phone just went off, I forgot to turn it off. I tell people that preaching Earth Charter and ethics is like having the tofu booth at Ribfest. Everybody knows it's better for you, but that's not why they came. In short, the Earth Charter is an ethical framework. And what makes it, in my mind, so valuable is it goes beyond just the environment. It talks about how, as human beings, we need to get together socially to make the environment work, because it's just one of the many parts. And I'll just briefly tell you what is Occupy Wall Street has adopted the Earth Charter. On Thursday, I was meeting with the corporate group that also has adopted the Earth Charter. We said, now how could you get two diverse groups to come together like that? That's what the Earth Charter does. And we have to not only bring together, there's no enemies, right? There's people who don't know enough. There's some greedy people that need to be reeled in. But if we see anybody as the enemy, then we're going to wind up being in a lifeboat that's sinking, arguing about how to fix it, when instead what we need to do is all get together and fix it in our own ways. There are answers for corporations, there are answers for the rest of us, and unless we can figure out some way to make us all get on the same page, which is what the purpose of your charter is, then we're going to wind up sinking in the lifeboat and then struggling over the life jacket.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Let's see who's here. Emmanuel, how did you give us a talk about what's happening in community gardens, small business?
Chocolate cake.
Thank you. I'm not going to use this because it uses electricity.
Right.
Oh,
I'm going to save a watt.
Thank you, save a watt.
And I think we don't need... I've been to an opera in France where there was 9,000 people, no amplification, so I think that we can manage without microphones. I saw a sign that said, addicted to oil, me? No. Community gardens. I think that we are what we eat and we are what we grow. Therefore, if we grow our own vegetables and we know that what they are, where they come from, we are ahead of the game. It is a tradition that has been going on for thousands of years, and now it has been captured by corporate interest. And we need to that. I'm not advocating the abolition of large-scale agriculture, but I think that we can temper the need for it by growing food for a number of reasons locally. And this is what community garden, urban agriculture, we need to grow food closer to where we are and where it is consumed. At the same time, there are ways, like Carl was mentioning, creation of methane that can be recaptured. That is a way to make a closer loop. And I'd like to give you an example of something that has been happening in St. Pete. We started a community garden at the Faith House, and we are growing vegetables on about 4,000 square feet. Those vegetables are feeding 50 residents. The leftovers of the kitchen are feeding 38 hands. that are producing about 250 eggs a week, so they don't have to buy any more eggs. They eat fresh vegetables, which they never did before. I'm talking about the residents. And the chicken produce manure that feeds the vegetables. So, and to get that started, we have used so far about 150 cubic yards of what is called yard waste, which actually is a resource from the city. So this is a very small example. If we can do it for 50 people, we can multiply it by 200, 500, and we can do the same thing all over. Community garden also, a key ingredient to make them successful is to have people who are trained and who understand the basics of gardening. Because goodwill and enthusiasm is a perishable commodity. And people who do not feel comfortable getting involved in a garden and who are waiting for somebody to tell them what to do, enthusiasm and goodwill vanishes very quickly. So it is absolutely imperative, if we want to develop community gardens and urban agriculture, to have a core of people that will understand the basics of gardening. So I think this is our first priority. And we were in Tampa recently, and we saw an incredible enthusiasm, but there were gardens that were crying for a little more knowledge and a little more, and it's true too in St. Pete and in the gardens that I'm involved in. Every day I read more about gardening, and I may be, a couple steps ahead of most people, but the more you learn, the more you realize that there is to learn.
Thank you. Talk about awakening the dreamer. Why don't you give us a couple of minutes of awakening the dreamer, with or without the mic?
You want to take a minute to talk about that one?
Hello. A couple different organizations or activities I represent. I want to introduce myself under one, which is I'm the statewide coordinator for the Institute of Noetic Sciences. For people that are not familiar with noetic sciences, it was started by the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who from outer space had a very spiritual experience while looking at the Earth and realized our interconnectedness with the Earth. He came back to the Earth and started Institute of Noetic Sciences almost 40 years ago to have a scientific study of states of consciousness, connectedness. It involves quantum physics. It involves our spirituality and all those. So much of what I do, I'm a therapist like Andy. We belong to similar groups of eco-therapists that we as therapists work with people's reaction to global climate change, etc. We're very concerned about things like that. The Pachamama Alliance is an alliance that was started in South America by the Ashwar tribe. The Ashwar tribe are a dream culture, and they reached out to us in the north. They had dreams that their lands were going to be taken away and destroyed, and they find out that the oil interests were surrounding their country, their lands. They reached out to people, some of them from Noetic Sciences, Lynn Twist and John Perkins and people like that. If you're familiar, John Perkins wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman, extremely influential book. So they reached out to us in the north and into industrialized countries, and they said to us, do not come here and rescue us. That's not what this is about. What we're asking you to do, what they've asked us to do, is to change our dream. We have a dream that centers around commercialization, material, industrialization, capitalism, etc. They said that we need to change our dream in our culture such that we understand our interconnectedness with the earth, that we know what happens to the earth happens to us. If we pollute the earth, we are polluting us as a species, as a people, our children, etc. So we do programs all over the country. There's several of us in this group here that are Awakening the Dreamer facilitators. We've done many groups. I've done several with David. Sharon Joy is a facilitator of Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream. So that's what we do. If anybody knows an event or a place where they would like us to have an Awakening the Dreamer symposium happen, we can do it from 3 hours till 8 hours. And it awakens us. It's very, very well done. Many, many people, John Perkins, who else are some of the people? Julia Butterfly is in it.
Joanna Macy.
Joanna Macy is in it. Barbara Marks Hubbard is a part of it. Just great names. Brian Swim is a part of it. Many people that you will recognize are part of Awakening the Dreamer. So if you know of a venue that you would like us to hold this, get in touch with David or myself or Sharon Joy. We would be very honored to do an Awakening the Dreamer symposium for you. Okay.
Kathy, why don't you come up, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, Gulf Restoration and what Sierra Club maybe?
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kathy Harrelson. I work as a Florida organizer for Gulf Restoration Network. It's a nonprofit based in New Orleans. They do a lot of work around oil and water, which, hey, don't mix. Clue. I've started working on water issues here in Florida, freshwater quantity issues, which I always say I'm from Pinellas County and you're the cautionary tale because we pumped out our water in the 70s and we've been pretty much sucking everybody else dry since then. But so important to know that. But all of this relates to climate change. Oh, also the other hat is sort of the business hat with Furious Marketing Group, trying to bring some solar and just really bring business initiatives that contribute to the broader, greenscape that we're all hoping for. So I love the whole, do this with love thing, but I have to tell you, somewhere in my past there was probably some kind of soldier, warrior, somebody like that who when I hear Governor Rick Scott, for example, say that he does not believe in man-made climate change or even climate change, I get very angry because he's now relegating my grandson to some sort of future hellscape, which I really am at the point. We have run away from talking about climate change in business circles and government circles. You said it, you're right. Even among environmentalists, it doesn't get talked about. How else can we say it? How else can we get things done? And I'm right there with them all, because when I'm wearing those hats, I do the same thing. But you know what? It is time for us to use our voices. The 50 generation, I think you said that, Andy, 50 generation should be the battle cry, because it is a battle. It is a battle at the basic level of community and all the way up. And it's just time that we started to talk about it, not just amongst the choir here. So, it doesn't mean you have to beat people with it, but drum beat of it, just begin the drum beat. And let's start getting this out there to the congregation. And the choir knows the song. We just need to get out and do it. So thanks so much.
Marie, what about Time Bank?
My name is Marie Nelson, and
About 7 or 8, well, I've been an activist all my life, and I've been an environmentalist since the late 60s, and but in recent years, I got interested in something called permaculture, which some of you know about, which is an integrative, philosophical core and with principles for application in a wide range of fields. And one of the fields that I've been particularly interested in lately is ethics, and how ethics have been applied or not applied in our financial realm. And so in order to begin working on that, I thought I want to find an area where I can actually do something on the ground and make a difference, and have started with a group of friends, many of them here. Kathy was one of the people who helped me in the very beginning to get the nerve up to just go ahead and start a time bank, which is a community, really, of people who are sharing skills. And the wonderful thing about time banking is that everybody's equal. The rich don't get richer and the poor don't get poorer in a time bank. And when I first started it, I thought it was just about my friends and I were going to start it and hope that it would then grow and be available for people, particularly if times got really hard, which they have done. And but we also face all kinds of climate shocks and economic shocks, health shocks that could happen to us. So I thought that the time bank could be available for individuals. But it's really interesting the longer I'm part of it and studying what's available in it. I thought I turned that off. It's like the horizon just keeps receding. And I've discovered that time banking is used by government agencies. It's used by nonprofits. It's used by churches. In the beginning, often to manage their volunteers and give something back to their volunteers. It also transforms the relationship between professionals and clients and into a much more equal relationship. And it saves everybody money. And the one example that I want to give you that's most interesting to me and was most transformative in my own thinking, expanding my thinking about what a time bank can do, is about a city in New Zealand. And after a year and a half ago, there was a big earthquake in New Zealand, and there was this one town that had a time bank. And after the earthquake happened, the city, the mayor went to this little time bank and said, "We need your help." And that time bank coordinated the response of the city, of all the first responders, whatever their Coast Guard equivalent is, whatever their National Guard equivalent is, the International Red Cross, all of the response to the earthquake was coordinated by this little time bank, which grew substantially in the process. And I read, in May of last year, I read an article written by the person who had started that time bank and who had been the main coordinator of it, who said that their town was the one that got off to the best start, that recovered the fastest, or that recovered the most from that terrible tragedy. So a lot of things have been expanding my vision, and if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'd love to talk to you. So.
Thank you, Marie. And tomorrow they have a time bank picnic at Lake Seminole. So don't forget to ask about that. Thank you so much. Let's see. Christian, why don't you tell us about the People's Budget Review? Thank you.
Can you guys hear me all right? No? Yes. My name is Christian Haas. I work at USF St. Pete, coordinate mentors for students with developmental disabilities, and in my free time I volunteer with Awake Pinellas, a progressive activist organization, and the People's Budget Review. So the People's Budget Review is kind of, it's a lot about what you're talking about, and I'm glad Councilman Nurse is here. We came together to grassroots coalition of community organizations, and the goal is to involve the citizens in the budgeting process. As much as we like to think we're engaged when we talk about the pier and the police station, every single year the city spends millions and millions of dollars that define our quality of life, and there's no clear avenue for citizen engagement, and it's difficult for the council themselves to go out and get en masse widespread input. So it should be incumbent upon us as concerned and awake citizens to try and gather our people's input. And Doug and Sharon, you guys inspired me to actually, I don't know if you know this, you guys inspired me to get involved in this kind of stuff through the Braconic Consensus Building Workshop. And this, my passion came directly from that. Communities are most capable of figuring out their own problems and prioritizing their own needs. And there's no concerted effort to do that, at least coordinating with the government. So, we need these types of movements to come together to share ideas, but we also need concerted efforts to engage folks like Carl to let them know what we're thinking. And in a lot of ways, we're providing political cover because sometimes parties won't let you make decisions that the people really need you to make. So we started this project in March. We've gotten over 2,000 responses, and the goal is to provide an online opportunity for citizens to prioritize the needs in the community, and then we mobilize people to the budget summits, the only avenue currently that we have to engage the city in terms of the budget. So we want to fill the budget summits with people that want to speak about whatever issues that they're passionate about. We had a lot of success. We got 2,000 surveys. We had over 100 people in the last budget summit, which have been sparsely attended in the past. Now we're in phase 2 with a more refined survey, which is kind of indicative of the reality of the situation. We're asking more specifics about what the options council has available to them. But so this has short-term $1 million implications. If we can provide the cover or the push for the council to, for instance, not cut and look for alternative revenues to save some of the services, that's a multi-million-dollar year-by-year impact that we could have through this simple consensus building effort. But the long term, and this is what really drives me, is that I want to see St. Petersburg transform into a culture of citizen participation. We might not be able to understand federal politics and immigration and education reform as a unit, but as a community, with the technology we have available to us, we should be able to understand what's in our best interest, and we should have an avenue to advocate for ourselves in the public sphere. And this is a way for the city and the people to work together to forge the dynamic that I think the founders envisioned when they came up with a representative model. And now we have the opportunity to do so. So this is, thank you for inviting me. And if you guys would like, we'd love for your input on the second phase of the survey. Right now the city's kind of agreed that we need to find revenues unless we want to make, severe cuts. We've cut most of the fat, and I think most of them agree we're getting down to the bone. So this survey basically says, here's a couple options that the city's floating. What options do you prefer, or do you prefer more cuts? And I'd love for you guys to take the survey. More importantly, I'd love for you to share the link to peoplesbudgetreview.org. I also have little info things. But look forward to this happening every year, because my goal is to make sure that St. Petersburg transforms into a more participatory model for other communities to adapt to, where the city respects our consensus building abilities, and they respect our rightful place in the market, in the public sphere, and in the debate and the conversation. And really, we need to be working together anyways. There's enough of this adversarial citizens versus government type deal. The government is the embodiment of the people's interest, and we got to make sure, we got to create the avenues for that structure to flourish. So thanks for the time, and thank you all for the work you guys are doing.
A survey if you're here in St. Pete and haven't taken it yet. Well, what he was saying about cutting down and getting down to the bone, I thought it was a good segue for you, Bill, to talk about permaculture, which is a whole system. In my view, what I'm saying is we are down and we are planting the seed corn, folks. So So whole system thinking, Bill's going to tell us a little bit more about permaculture. Bring it back on.
It's okay. I don't want to see it.
Okay. Hi, folks. I'm with a group called Gaia's Guardians. The tagline is an urban permaculture collective, and we're in St. Petersburg. We're 2 years old. We started by studying, trying to inform ourselves about what permaculture is, and because very few people know what it means and what the possibilities are. So we started studying with the best introductory text called Gaia's Garden, which is wonderful because it's all about gardening and food production from an ecological standpoint. But so our group from the beginning has had a focus on local food production and trying to diminish our own ecological footprint by providing for some of our own needs in our own on our own properties. We have basically 3 goals in our group. Study, I mentioned study, which we do through showing videos, reading appropriate text, and doing field trips to homes that have been organized for sustainability, for public gardens, wherever we can learn, excuse me, some permaculture lessons. And there's a wonderful place in North Fort Myers we go to every year called ECHO, which is it's a tropical agriculture research station run by a Christian group, and they do a fabulous job of presenting food production for this area, and particularly as it applies to low technology methods. And so we go down there, and that's a great field trip. So that's part of our education process. Our second goal is action. We feel that if we're educated and don't take action, it's worthless. So what do we do for action? We go to people's homes, group members who make an application, and we do what's called perma-blitzes. The whole idea is to increase the homeowner's capacity for growing food. And we'll go there and we'll install vegetable beds through a sheet mulching method, which is creating horizontal compost piles, and we move many cubic yards of material in place, and then the homeowner is able to plant immediately in that. So, so far in the past 2 years, we've done about 15 or 16 of these. Some of them have been pretty extensive, some of them have been small. But it's like an Amish barn raising, you know. Instead, we're helping people raise food by installing these sheet mulches. We also will set up rain catchment, because permaculture is much more than just food growing. It's how one adapts to natural systems in terms of creating the resources and producing the needs that we have. So the PermaBlitz also ties into our third goal of our group, which is community. Because I think one of the great needs in our local, well, it's more than local, but our present time is community. People are hungry for interaction with each other and doing constructive and positive things together. And that's a direct outcome of the kind of society that we live in, where people are in isolated nuclear families. So those 3 goals are very important. And then as we proceed and do what we do, we're learning other aspects of permaculture, which is a total umbrella, really, because it involves financial matters, it involves social matters, it involves government governance, all sorts of things. So we meet twice a month at the Shuffleboard.
Has it got a timer on it? Or at the UU Church. And if you're interested, I have some Gaia's Guardian business cards, and I'll be glad to hand them out.
Thank you. Yeah, we have unseen guests here. The permaculture concept isn't necessarily new. It's been around probably for millennia, but the idea of looking at the whole system, I think, is pulling us together, thinking about the different petals, 7 petals that are part of the flower, and that includes the infrastructure, it includes the environment, etc. 7 petals. And this got a real strong movement in the UK with a guy named Rob Hopkins, who thought, while I'm teaching permaculture here, what can we do in this little town where I live? And he started what's now become Transitions. It moved from transition town to transition movement. Now it's transition. And Eric Stewart here is one of the star examples of being a transition community with Code Green Community. Eric, you want to come tell us about what you're doing? And let's see if we can, no mic.
It's fine, we're small group.
Thank you, Eric.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I hear you in the water. Well, as Sharon mentioned, I have a website called Code Green Community. As some people have noticed, I'm taking a video recording of this. I've been making YouTubes for the past, since 2008, on community events, group meetings, businesses, different things that have been happening in the Tampa Bay area. And I've been connecting people on an online social networking website where people can join up as a member using their Facebook, their Google, Twitter, whatever way that you want. You can connect really easily on this website, and you can blog, you can share photos, share videos, and also share events. So over 700 events have been happening since 2008 on this website. And it's all crowdsourced. So I'm not about being the leader of the Tampa Bay area. I'm about everybody being a leader. Everyone stepping up to the plate and posting an event, posting photos of what you're doing in your backyard. I want to see thousands and hundreds of thousands of people initiated. I want to see a tipping point happening in the Tampa Bay area where all of us are working together in small groups and achieving things. And so I have a couple of different apps on my website. There's a member map where people can find people in their neighborhood and connect with them, message them, say hello, see what you can do in your neighborhood. Videos, there's over 400 videos of what we, both local and national and regional, of what we can do. I try and find stuff on the internet and share it with people in the community. But as Sharon mentioned, I took a permaculture design course. I was with Marie Nelson and Jungle Jay. Kareen was our teacher, and Bill was one of our teachers as well. And so I learned about permaculture and all the different varieties of ways that we can influence our natural environment to take care of people, take care of the planet. I've been a part of a transition movement up north in Newport Richey. We started a couple of community gardens. We helped set up, we're in the process of setting up a co-op where we're going to bring food from local farmers and connect with other local co-ops and bring food to people. So it'll be affordable, it'll be where you can directly influence the climate change. If you really want to change climate change, we need to make jobs. I think a lot of people have been talking and bring that up. We need to bring jobs right now, and there's so much work to do. I mean, right now, this sunny beach, all that energy is pouring on us, and it's here for us to take. There's so much energy, there's so much available land where we can grow food. There's so much potential. I heard a lot of people, I go to these events all the time, and there's a lot of doom and gloom and pessimism, and I don't want to be that way, because there's so much potential for abundance. We just got to think differently. We got to take the different concepts that the Native Americans and the Aboriginal people from different places have used and live on our land differently. We have to know where our food comes from, know where our water comes from, and our energy, and then start to use our capitalist system and co-op it. We need to co-op our capitalistic global system and use it to relocalize. And we can do that. We can use the internet, we can use our money and use it in a wise way so that it invests in new businesses and new concepts. And so I really want to share the community that I found. There's over 600 people on this website. If you aren't a part of it, please connect and share what you're doing in your backyard and what you're doing with your organization or group. You can start up a group and you can connect with other people locally. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, as we come to the close of hearing this eclectic variety of things that are actually happening here and now to exemplify a caring community for climate change. Back to what I remember David said at the beginning about being active locally. And as Eric was saying, your own backyard and your own neighborhood. So I can't think of a better way to end this part of the program than for Mike Gully to talk about the Council of Neighborhood Associations here in St. Petersburg and what neighborhoods right here are already doing and the potential to do more. Thank you, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Gully, the President of the Council of Neighborhoods of St. Petersburg. One of my former presidents sitting over here and very instrumental in the city, calling others. I keep hearing community every place I go, whether it's this group, whether it's almost everything when I took office as president. And so I've been trying to figure out how we can make Kona a council of neighborhoods with a vision of uniting and building neighborhoods and advocating for neighborhoods and building coalitions. How can you make this work? We can't be all things to all people. So my role probably is more to try to help bring some of that together. And I'd like to see the people that are talking about community to help us in our neighborhoods get involved somehow, either presentations or whatever with the neighborhood associations, because that's really where that administrative part goes. But there's a lot of volunteers and activists there, and I've got to find a way to energize them. We've been involved in community gardens through the Bartlett Park Garden probably for 10 years or so, and now it's taken off in St. Pete. We've always been a political group, and we've had budgets, and so we did a coalition and worked with the Budget Review Committee. So it's about how do you build coalitions so that they'll work. I'd like to think Kona was more of a doer, but we're really not supposed to be. We're a facilitator, and I need to get to the individual neighborhoods and get them to do what they're supposed to do. And that y'all are part of all those neighborhoods, so help us make those work. And let's define, is it getting out in the bayous and cleaning them up, or is it being the administrators that try to help the movements go? So we're trying to define that. That's where Kona, I think, is what we're supposed to do. So
thank you. Thank you, Mike. Hey, thanks everybody. I think in the model that Carl and I were using about green jobs, you've heard from the dots. And it's now 11:30, so I want to respect that we said this would be an hour. And we actually...
Far too esoteric, it's an abstraction. But the reality of the world is devastating as we continue to pump more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every day than the Earth has the capacity to reclaim by its own natural systems. I'm the executive director of an organization called Sunshine State Interfaith Power and Light. We are a fairly new state affiliate with a nationwide Interfaith Power and Light organization. Interfaith Power and Light is the religious response to global warming. I know that that troubles many people. We have had many environmental groups look at us askance and say, but you have been the enemy for a long, long time. Some folks, some religious folks have been. But the thing that enticed me to this work of interfaith environmental work, an interfaith, truly an interfaith response to global warming is this. Several years ago, I came to realize through study that when you look at all of the major world religions, there's one area that we all hold in common, and there's really no disagreement on. Who would have thought it? And the concept is this. The earth does not belong to us. It never has, it never will. And on top of that, we are all, in the native traditions, when I talk about the two-legged people, all of the major faith traditions of the world remind us that we are here to be stewards, to be benevolent caretakers of this planet. And I think Great Spirit gave us that work, knowing that not only do we have an amazing capacity to care for the earth, we also have amazing capacity to harm and destroy it. So we have to be reminded over and over and over again why we're really here. We're here because we are about caring and about loving. We're here to love each other. We're here to love this planet. We are here to love not only the two-legged people, but the four-legged people, the winged people, the finned people, even the creeping, crawling people.
I don't know that I can fit the paint. Anybody have a rhythm that can do with this?
As Sharon, Joy, and I were coming up with an agenda, out of somewhere the word 4 elements came. So I wanted to share with you, as briefly as I can, based on some notes I wrote, a brief explanation of how the 4 elements of fire, air, water, and earth relate to what we are doing as it relates to climate change. Fire as an element represents transformation. In the physical plane, we have sun, flame, blaze. On the spiritual plane, it is light, that is illumination. But when fire gets out of control, fire can kill life and destroy forests and fields. Hence, we may state that the increase in wildfires in last element, air. Air, too, is a cleansing power. Air provides oxygen. As we breathe, we observe the principle of giving and taking. In breathing, we are truly connected one to each other. In a polaric sense, this source of life, air, can be a terrible force of destruction when out of control. We call this force hurricanes, tornadoes. In Florida, we know this all too well. Humans are destroying and protecting the life-giving air shield of Earth by exhausts, fumes, and toxic gases. In conclusion, our atmosphere cries out. Get me back to 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide, soon, very soon. Sharon Joy is now going to introduce the next section related to those who are present who are going to be speakers. Sharon Joy.
Thank you, David. So did you hear enough about what 350.org is to answer your question? Because the main thing is we're here. Bill McGibbon is up at Middlebury College in Vermont, and he's kind of a ringleader in this, spokesperson and behind 350.org. The other sponsor or host today is the Interfaith Power and Light, and we have the good fortune Executive Director here to issue a welcome. And Andy, if you will, tell folks what Interfaith Power and Light is about.
Thank you, Sharon Joy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is amazing and wonderful to me to be among like-spirited brothers and sisters as we come together to do the work to reclaim 350. It's a scientific concept for some people. It's
caused by excessive climatic change and droughts is to us really a specter of climate change. Second, the element water is a cleansing power. Water is vital to Earth. Water is vital to life on Earth. But also water has the terrible power of destruction, such as tidal waves, storm surges, floods. On a spiritual plane, water represents unconditional, flowing, streaming love as that of a mother. Constant motion is her aim, change and renewal her way. Hence, we may say that water is in its visible manifestation of climatic impact. A very potent image is found in storms and increasingly in the long droughts. Third, the element earth means matter. The element earth shows in wood, minerals, soil, vegetable matter, food. On a spiritual plane, earth is symbolic of the Creator, providing all creatures with the love of Pachamama, who presides over planting and harvesting. Earth, as the third, Earth has the power of terrible destruction, such as earthquakes on the ocean floor. Remember Fukushima. And so landslides and beach erosion, as natural barriers are diminished, reminds us that climate change has its roots deep in our psyche. The fourth, happy May 5, Cinco de Mayo. Yay! We're honored to have a drummer, Rhonda. Let's give her a hand. And we're honored to have you here too. We have, yay for us. We have here several instruments, mostly maracas. I invite you to take one back to your seat, and we're going to follow the rhythm established by Rhonda for about 5 minutes, and then we'll begin with an explanation of the 4 elements, and we'll proceed from there. So feel free to come up and get one. Hold them. Do not start yet until we all have one, please. Okay, so Rhonda will set the tone for us. This is a moment of going deep inside, opening in a sacred manner. So grab your instruments and let's proceed to find our inner spirit.
We need more with cowbell.